if you're struggling, find a piece of music that puts you in a certain sort of space. I feel like sometimes a lot of these things can be good tools. Incense, these kind of tools where, it's like set and setting. You're changing your environment a little bit to put you in a different state. And it's also based on memory because, I have these strong memory sort of associations with incense and with music. I'd gone from, watching a lot of shows and listening to all the music that I had been listening to for decades. All my tastes really shifted. I shifted from rock and electronic stuff to Indian music, and then in terms of what I was watching, I stopped watching a lot of these shows that I was into, and I just started listening to other people talk about their spiritual experiences. And I came across a Christian preacher he was kind of wild, and that was part of the attraction, was that he was saying these outrageous things that I kind of wanted to disagree with. And he's talking about, I guess a question a lot of people ask: where does evil come from? And you might say, like, oh, that's an overly simplistic question. For a lot of us, these are thought experiments. Try to organize your mind in a new way that is oriented spiritually to the truth, to what is true and wise. And I think a lot of times, if you had these old thought patterns that have really created these grooves in your mind where you tend to fall through the path of least resistance into these old patterns, new ideas, new thought patterns, new hobbies, new music can really help shift you out of those old patterns. One of these thought experiments is asking questions like that, like, where does evil come from? Good and evil are not unlike hot and cold, in the sense that cold really isn't a thing, it's just the absence of heat. And so evil isn't really a thing, it's just the absence of good. They are a binary in that way, but there's only one thing, So it's kind of a paradox. It's like good and evil are a binary when looked at from one perspective, but when you look at it, I think properly, it's like there's really only one thing. Everything else is just a lack of that thing. And so, in asking this question, where does evil come from? So his take, and I'll just say it, it's like, people ask me all the time where evil comes from. Evil comes from children. It's like, what? Wow, evil comes from children. Is that a really good way to think about this? I thought about it for a while, and I started to think about maturity. What is maturity? What is being an adult? And that's the cool thing about some of these thought experiments, is that they prompt, these sort of different trains of thought that take you in places maybe that are unexpected. This idea that evil comes from children, it's like, wow, what a dark way to look at children. But you think about somebody who's narcissistic, somebody who is selfish, maybe they're cruel, they are reacting in ways that are harmful. And I kind of realized, it's really because they're just immature. And again, all children are different. There's a spectrum, I think, of the types of people that exist. And some children show more a natural sort of inclination towards sharing, and then some kids are a little more selfish. And I think that's a natural part of the variety that nature wants to produce. Kids are selfish, they're self-centered. They can be cruel without realizing what they're doing. If you're talking about raising children and trying to make sure they grow up properly, you're really just saying, like, I want this kid to, to be whole, to have a path to walk where you know the rules and you are inspired to step up to the task, or to become an adult, so to speak. And what is an adult? Adult is somebody who knows what they are, meaning, like, you know what people are. You have a narrative, you have an understanding of the cosmos to the extent that you know what you are. Be fruitful. And I think, if you can't increase and multiply, then be fruitful, meaning produce things that are good, Tell me that there's no good and evil next time you see a baby laughing. A lack of goodness is nothing. So crying is like there's something missing. Maybe they're hungry. Again, I think that's a good way to look at a lot of these things, is the relationship between parents and children, between adults and their apprentices, let's say. You're training kids how to be stable human beings, which really just means like a mature adult. And there's a lot of talk these days of people, struggling with adulting. So many things to talk about there. There's certain lessons that you need to learn at certain periods in your development. And I guess I'll call it spiritual discipline, for lack of a better term. This idea that to be aiming at something that's higher than yourself.